This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Hellmann's believes they can turn any mayo hater into a lover. So, if you know someone who thinks mayo equals bland, show their taste buds the truth and challenge them to try Hellmann's flavored mayo. With irresistible flavors like Hellmann's spicy mayo, garlic aioli, chipotle, and Italian herb, they'll be eating their words. Challenge haters to try Hellmann's flavored mayo and get them to eat their words. Learn more at hellmanns.com/eatyourwords.
The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox is on Hulu. In 2007, Amanda Knox was studying abroad in Italy. She had no idea her dream would turn into a nightmare. Inspired by the actual events of her wrongful conviction and 15-year fight for freedom, watch the new Hulu original series, The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. Now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
EVO. It didn't start with the voices. The voices came later. It started with a smell. Somewhere between mildew and burning metal, the scent would drift in just before dusk, through the dormitory hallways of the San Miguel Seminary outside Caracas, Venezuela. And it wasn't constant, just a trickle at first, a strange brassy stink that clung to cassocks and altar cloths no matter how often they were laundered. The janitor blamed the plumbing, the rector blamed the humidity, and the seminarians, being seminarians, they blamed each other. Now, boys are inventive when they're cloistered, especially when there's something unsettling in the air. The seminary was built in the 1960s, a squat concrete complex wrapped around a modest chapel with a peaked tile roof. It wasn't haunted. At least, it didn't used to be haunted. That designation would come years later, whispered into cell phones and retreat centers and passed between bishops like contraband. But in the summer of 2017, one name echoed through every hallway like a warning shot. Brother Tomas. He was 21, bright, reserved, the kind of young man who brought up the Council of Trent over coffee and actually meant it. He was on track for early ordination, a favorite of the rector, not prone to outbursts, not prone to much of anything at all, really, until he returned from a pilgrimage. Welcome back to The Devil Within. This is the Caracas Seminary possession. So they had gone to Betania, the site of an alleged Marian apparition from the 1980s that, for reasons political and theological, had never been fully endorsed by Rome. Now, the church allows these places to exist in a kind of spiritual limbo. Not condemned, not canonized, just unofficial shrines for unofficial miracles. There were rumors that the land had been cursed by indigenous tribes long before even the Spanish arrived. Rumors that the apparition wasn't Mary, or rather, it wasn't just Mary. Brother Tomas came back changed. He didn't talk about the trip. He stopped eating in the cafeteria, became pale and withdrawn. He wrote in a black notebook constantly, and he slept with his mattress on the floor of his room. He said the frame creaked too much. He said it woke him up at night. And then he said he could hear it whispering. All right, by late August, the rector intervened. Tomas was brought into the office for what was intended to be a spiritual check-in. Now, the story goes that halfway through the meeting, the rector reached across the desk to place a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. And Tomas bit him. Hard. There was blood, there was screaming, there was an emergency meeting. And then came the voices. Not his, the others. Witnesses claim that during subsequent weeks, Tomas began speaking in tongues no one could identify, at least not at first. One sounded like a kind of guttural Latin, but with verbs twisted backwards and syntax that made no grammatical sense. Another, allegedly, was some version of Aramaic. When a visiting theology professor was brought in to listen, he left the room, went out into the hallway, and threw up. Tomas's black notebook, when discovered, was filled with pages of cramped writing, and most of it was nonsensical. But some of it wasn't. There were names of bishops, birth dates of faculty members, even a warning written in childlike block letters. Do not sleep in room 206. Of course, there was no room 206, at least not on the current campus layout. So the Vatican was notified, not formally, of course, these things never are, but word travels quickly when the supernatural brushes up against the sacramental. A Jesuit from Bogota was flown in, then another from the Spanish-speaking arm of the International Association of Exorcists. Yeah, and neither would complete the rite. The Archdiocese suspended all classes by September. A rotating cadre of priests kept vigil in the chapel, students were sent home, and the official explanation was a spiritual retreat. But there are no records of where Brother Tomas went. Only a rumor that he was transferred to a Benedictine monastery in the Andes, where he remains, allegedly, sedated and silent to this day. And if that were all, if it were just a disturbed seminarian with a flair for melodrama, it might be dismissed. But 2 months later, during renovations on the northwest wing, construction workers discovered a bricked-up stairwell behind a plaster wall. At the bottom, a single locked door. Above the frame, carved into the stone, were 3 words in Latin. Exi qui loqueris. Leave, you who speak. The door at the bottom of that stairwell wasn't locked. It had been once. There were marks on the latch, old ones, the kind that suggest someone tried to seal something in or seal something out, depending on who you ask. But by the time the contractors reached it, the padlock had rusted clean through. The door creaked open on its own, and behind it was a single room. No furniture, no windows, no lights, just dust, cold air, and a large wooden cross affixed upside down to the wall. One of the workers made a joke about Satanists. Another took a photo. The third, an older man who'd worked construction through the Chavez years, backed out of the stairwell and refused to return. It's not right, he said. The air's too heavy. Oh, and that photo, by the way, it never developed. It just came out black. Now, the priests didn't talk about it, not at first. The rector gave a statement about historic structural anomalies and ordered the stairwell resealed. But the younger seminarians, those still on campus under clerical care, they weren't so easily silenced. Especially not when one of them reported waking in the night to see Brother Tomas standing in the hallway. Now, this would have been unremarkable if Brother Tomas hadn't already been gone for over a week. So you'd be forgiven for thinking the Christian church is an institution of transparency. It's not. It's an institution of containment. There are protocols for possession, unofficial ones, of course. Rome doesn't publish a manual on what to do when someone starts hissing during confession, but among bishops and seminary rectors, there exists a quiet understanding. If a case rises above the threshold of spiritual direction and into the realm of the inexplicable, the church's response is not to escalate, it's to isolate. And in the case of Caracas, the Archdiocese chose to bury the entire northwest wing. And I mean literally, the stairwell was filled with concrete. Mass was moved to an auxiliary chapel, the rector was reassigned to a monastery in Portugal, and most of the remaining staff were rotated out over the next 6 months. The message was very clear. This didn't happen. You didn't see what you saw. The floor plan, it's always looked just like this. But see, there's a problem with erasing stories in places like seminaries, because the walls have ears. And what they heard was this. A janitor claimed he found claw marks inside the faculty lavatory mirror, not on the surface, but inside the glass. A night watchman allegedly caught an audio recording of someone whispering the names of every seminarian who had ever lived on campus, some of whom had died decades earlier. And then there was the nun. She'd also come from Bogota, and no one knew why. She wasn't in a habit. She didn't give her name. She asked for a chapel key. She sat in the front pew and didn't move for 12 hours. The young seminarian who'd lent her the key swore that she never blinked. And by the time she left, the pew was scorched. In November, the Archdiocese held a closed-door convocation. The minutes from that meeting do not exist. Well, not officially. But one of the junior secretaries leaked a list of those in attendance. There were 5 priests, 2 bishops, 1 Vatican official, and a woman named simply Sister L, listed without a surname, congregation, or title. The rumor is that she's one of a handful of laywomen trained by the church in auxiliary exorcism rites. It's a kind of off-the-books deliverance ministry that exists in dioceses too embarrassed to call Rome. Now, according to an unsigned report, she offered 3 conclusions. 1, the site was not cursed, it was inhabited. 2, Brother Tomas had not opened the door, it was open before he got there. And 3, the room beneath the stairwell should never have existed on consecrated ground. So what gives? She left the next morning. No one saw her go. The seminarians, those who stayed, spoke very little about it. But one did write in a private blog, later taken down, that the chapel door began rattling every night at 3:17 a.m. Always 3:17. Why that time? No one knows. But if you flip open a Douay Rheims Bible and look at John 3:17, here's what you'll read. For God sent not his Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world may be saved by him. A verse about salvation read aloud over and over by something no longer interested in being saved.
Isn't home where we all want to be? Reba here for Realtor.com, the pros' #1 most trusted app. Finding a home is like dating. You're searching for the one. With over 500,000 new listings every month, you could find the one today. Download the Realtor.com app because you're nearly home. Make it real with Realtor.com.
Pros #1 most trusted app based on August 2024 proprietary survey. Over 500,000 new listings every month based on average new for sale and rental listings. February 2024 through January 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Dogfish Head Craft Brewery. The Grateful Dead and Dogfish Head have gotten the band back together with the release of Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale, a light-bodied pale ale brewed with sustainable Kernza grains, granola, and heaps of good karma for a refreshing brew that's music to your taste buds. Available nationwide. Visit dogfish.com to find Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale in your neck of the woods. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery is located in Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
I'm Ashley Graham, and as a parent, I know the back-to-school transition can be a lot. When it comes to wellness, Ollie supports me and my family through it all. Kids Multi is big in my house. It supports their immune system, and they love to take it. A win-win for everyone. Shop these products at ollie.com or retailers nationwide. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Buying a car shouldn't eat up your week. That's why Carvana made it convenient. Car buying that fits around your life, not the other way around. You can get pre-qualified for an auto loan in just a couple of minutes and browse thousands of quality car options, all within your terms, all online, all on your schedule. Turn car buying into a few clicks and not a full week's endeavor. Finance and buy your car at your convenience on Carvana. Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
Room 206 doesn't exist. Not on the floor plan, not on the key rings, not in the whispered orientation tours that seminarians give each other during their first year. But if you go to the eastern hallway, just past the sacristy, beyond the old library, there's a blank section of wall that juts out 6 inches too far. It's painted over, seamless, untouched. That was until someone touched it. Now, we don't know who found it first. There's no security footage, there's no written confession, no report filed. Just a single red candle left burning in front of that wall. And the unmistakable mark of a keyhole, one that hadn't been there before. By then, Brother Tomas had been gone for nearly 2 months, and the wing with the buried stairwell was sealed. The seminary had reopened under strict conditions. No unchaperoned prayer, no sleeping alone, and though no one explained why, no mirrors allowed in dorm rooms. But again, seminarians are curious by nature. I mean, come on, you don't enroll in a life of vows and Latin liturgy unless you have a taste for mystery. So when a hallway that shouldn't exist hums at night and smells faintly of sulfur, someone's going to start asking questions. And what happened next is the part that never made it to the bishop's office. A student, only identified in later fragments as Nico, went looking. He borrowed a key ring from one of the assistant rectors under the pretense of doing his laundry. Instead, he returned to the hallway with a flashlight and a rosary. What he found wasn't a door, at least not in the traditional sense. It was more like a seam carved from within the wall. Old wood beneath newer plaster. A crucifix was carved into the frame, but again, upside down. So he pressed his ear to it. He said later that he didn't hear anything at first, just a low hum like radio static. But then a voice, and then several voices, speaking in unison, but not to him. They were speaking to each other. He said he only caught 2 words clearly. We remember. He dropped the flashlight, the bulb cracked, he ran off. And the next morning, when he went back to show someone, to show anyone, the door was gone. The wall was smooth, the keyhole had vanished. So, as you might expect, Nico never returned to the seminary. He left quietly, without any formal orders. And according to his cousin, who posted anonymously on a Venezuelan message board the following year, Nico now refuses to attend Mass. He can't recite the Lord's Prayer past the second line, and he won't even enter a building if it has a basement. Now, here's where the timeline begins to fracture. Roughly 1 week after the Room 206 incident, an altar server, 12 years old, from the nearby parish, was brought in for a minor training session. He wasn't staying on campus, he was just there for the day. He was left alone in the nave for 3 minutes while the priest left to get some more candles, and when the priest returned, the boy was curled up on the sanctuary floor, whispering, over and over again. That's right. We remember. The boy's parents said he'd never heard that phrase before, not something that they always said in his house. He didn't even know what a seminary was. But meanwhile, the archdiocese kept up appearances. They hosted a day of prayer for clergy vocations. They relaunched the seminary's website. They even published a smiling group photo of the remaining students. 13 in total. But if you look at that photo and count closely, there's a 14th figure, just behind the last student, standing in the shadows beneath the choir loft. The school claimed it was a smudge or lens flare. But a forensic photo analyst, again speaking under condition of anonymity, disagreed. That's a person, he said. And unless someone doctored the metadata within the camera, that figure wasn't in any of the other exposures. There's one more thing. The seminary and dormitories were repainted that fall. A fresh coat of white latex over every room. In one of them, room 214, 2 floors above the vanished door, a painter noticed something strange. As the final layer dried, words began to bleed through. A sentence. the door opens from the inside. Thanks for joining us on The Devil Within. Next time, part 2 of the Caracas Seminary possession. You could listen to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You could watch it on Spotify or on YouTube or wherever you get your content. The Devil Within is an EVO production, recorded live here at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil Within, I'm your host and writer, Brandon Morgan. Till next time, stay safe out there.